and welcome to Telewizja Republika. 3 U.S. soldiers were killed on Sunday in Jordan, while more than 40 other service members were injured following an uncrewed aerial system attack at a military base near the Syrian border. Those service members were in Jordan to support Operation Inherent Resolve, which is the U.S. and coalition mission to ensure the defeat of ISIS. As AP agency informs, and that's the agency cable, President Joe Biden has declared that the U.S. will respond after a drone strike by an Iran-backed group killed, as we mentioned, 3 U.S. troops and wounded dozens at the base in the northeast Jordan near the Syrian border. This attack, the first to cause U.S. fatalities in months, was blamed on Iranian-backed militias, which have targeted American forces across the Middle East since the Israel-Hamas war began on the October 7th. U.S. officials are working to identify the specific group responsible for the strike. The strike occurred at a logistics support base known as Tower 22. Here's what Reuters published about this attack.
3 U.S. service members were killed and dozens more wounded after a drone attack on U.S. forces stationed in Jordan. A person familiar with the matter identified the base as Tower 22 in northeastern Jordan, an outpost near the Syrian border, shown in this still taken before the attack. U.S. Central Command said at least 34 were injured, with that number expected to change as more seek care.
The attack raises concerns of increased military escalation in the region. Iran, however, has denied involvement in this attack. The fact is that no one doubts that it is Iran that is responsible for this attack, as it is responsible for Hamas and Hezbollah activities in Israel, Russian drone attacks against Ukraine, and Houthis pirate drone attacks against the Western vessels in the Red Sea. As we hear, the United States is considering various actions to defend its interests and troops, while congressional members urge a strong response to deter future aggression. The fact is that Jordan as a state was considered for a very long time a relatively safe place for U.S. troops, for Westerners in the region. The direct attack on American troops organizing a military operation against ISIS in the context of the Syrian war, where Russia is present for a very long time, brings the whole situation and the tension in the region to a completely new level. You can join us on rachoń.com. That's our website. You can leave us your email here so that you can receive our daily reports on the situation on the front line of the global war against the West. And that's what we are going to talk about on my show. My name is Michał Rachoń. This is Rachoń. And we roll in. And as we talk about the war waged in the skies, Jeff Fischer is again with us. Jeff, welcome back. Colonel Jeff Fischer, great to have you again on our program. This is something that is not very common. It doesn't happen very often. Actually, we've been all waiting. What will be the moment where the first casualties of the Iranian attacks against U.S. forces present in the Middle East are going to occur? Those are not the first casualties in the history. However, in this recent phase of conflict, first of that kind. What do you make of the events of the last days regarding the attack on the U.S. base in Syria?
Yeah, so I wish I was joining you under better circumstances, right? The United States just lost through 3 exceptional service members, 3 great soldiers who tragically lost their lives defending their nation. and I'd like to start there, right? But as we move forward and we expect some kind of response from the United States, the air tasking order, which basically goes out, is usually a 72-hour cycle. So I don't think that we would expect too much to happen until we get beyond, let's say, 48 hours to 72 hours. I think that's a fair assessment. What the strike or what the response looks like, I don't know at this point. I think that there's a wide range, right? I think we can look at there's probably some people out there that would like, and the Republicans would like to see a strike that goes, at the heart of Iran, maybe goes in and takes out some of those drone building facilities and the logistics systems, so that not only are the drone capabilities taken away for some of these Iranian-backed separatists, but also that you're taking away drone capability for Russia, right? Because Iran is making drones for Russia, so you could see that. I think on the far left-hand side, there's a lot of Democrats that would like to see some kind of diplomatic solution, more sanctions, something like that. The reason I bring up the two dichotomies, I think Joe Biden's kind of stuck in the middle, right? He's going to displease everybody. It's probably going to be something in the middle. The Democrats are going to say he did too much. The Republicans will probably argue that he didn't do enough.
This is always the case of answering to those kind of tragic events. But in a way, we are because we've been discussing here on this program the aspect of the drone fighting capabilities that are present now in arsenals of many state actors. And this what actually happened right now and last, let's say, 3 months is using of those drones capabilities by non-state actors, however, backed by Iran. It is something that I cannot remember in the recent past, that a non-state actor would use a drone technology in such, sorry to say that, effective manner, bringing casualties to the biggest military power in the world, which is United States. What do you make of it as a military professional, as a U.S. citizen, as a man who is a part of the military community of United States?
Yeah, I when I look at it through a military lens, I would tell you I'm frustrated, right? Because Iran gets the luxury of the strike without taking any risk, right? They've built the drone, they've passed the drone along to a non-state actor, and then the U.S. service members in this case have been killed. Let's not forget, this is about the 165th attack against U.S. installations in the theater. So this isn't a surprise. It was only a matter of time that someone was going to be wounded, injured, or killed. And by the way, I think it's also important to note, as soon as this happened, the Iranian government came out and immediately said that they took no part in this, and that it wasn't their responsibility or fault. And I find that hard to believe, because they knew exactly what was going to happen with this drone, right? They knew where they were sitting. They might not have pulled the trigger, but they set all the other pieces in place.
Well, that's the reason why you use proxies, just to have the luxury, as you said, to say that we got nothing to do with it. That's exactly the same what is going on with the Houthis attacks on the Red Sea. And this is the reason why I mentioned those 3 months, because this is roughly the time when those drone attacks against civilian vessels related to Western states, Western companies are happening. What is the reason for which those proxy organizations backed by Iran are attacking this kind of targets?
I think the Houthi situation is a little more nuanced and a little more interesting, right? They want to have control of the straits right there at the southern point of the Red Sea. And to be fair, that strait is really narrow, right? And we're talking 19 miles, 30 kilometers. If you try and send a ship right down the center of it, you're talking about a situation where if the Houthis are to launch a missile at a ship, the acquisition and reaction and terminal phase of that missile is less than 2 minutes, right? It's about 1.5 minutes. So you've really got to be on your game if you are going to try and find, fix, and finish any kind of missile system that comes at you. So Houthis are trying to control that. I get their point. I would say that, the Houthi situation also is nuanced in the sense that they can't control their airspace, right? So right now it's almost a chicken shoot, if you will, or a turkey shoot for U.S. forces over Yemen. They haven't shot down any of our airplanes. I don't believe they even damaged one of our airplanes yet. And our guys are flying at 20, 30,000 feet, and they're just literally plucking off what their target sets are with precision and great accuracy. If the U.S. chose to, it could really put some serious more pressure and pain on the Houthi rebels.
What is the way that a military unit present in the places where U.S. forces were present at the time of this Sunday attack, how do you defend against this kind of threats, those suicide drones that we report their activity in Ukraine for last 2 years, yet we now see an effect of this kind of deadly attack against U.S. What is the way that you defend against this kind of threat?
Sure. So you're going to have some kind of ground-based air defense system, and whether it's going to be a blanket coverage, in other words, one large system covers a bunch of outlying areas, or for every independent forward operating base, you're going to have some kind of dedicated ground-based air defense system. It could be what they call CWIS, which is like a 20 millimeter cannon that's on a radar. It could be missile systems. As I understand, and I think the intelligence is still not fully vetted on this, but that the base kind of expected that this drone that was coming back was actually one of their own, so they actually let it through the air defense systems, only to find out it wasn't theirs. It was an enemy one that came through. That's tragic, and it's unfortunate, and obviously someone's probably going to have to answer that. But it highlights an issue, right? The United States military, when it's a victim of continued terrorist attacks, has to be right 100% of the time. Terrorists only have to be right once or twice, right? Yeah, if they're right once, they get in and they've achieved their objective.
Yeah, if we look back on the history of the casualties of U.S. casualties in the Middle East, pretty often, or in probably most of the cases, we are talking about the victims of terrorist attacks backed by certain state actors, and this is a tragic history of Western presence in the region. But I would like to move to other fronts of the same war, the war against the West. Again, that's the way, at least I see this incident, this tragic attack against U.S. What is the reason for which U.S. troops are being targeted in those places? We are talking about Syria, where a kind of geopolitical war is going on since 2012, 2015. Russia is active over there. United States are active over there. The Syria itself divided is present over there. Israel is present over there. Iran is present. It's a kind of a war zone for many years. Why U.S. troops are attacked there?
Yeah. So when we look at the Middle East, there's many nations where the United States military is in that location at the invitation of the host government. That's Iraq, that's Jordan, that's Saudi Arabia. In the case of Syria, the United States is there because they're there on an operation, on a military operation. It is kinetic. It is a military warfare operation. It is a counter ISIS mission. And we are there basically trying to, in effect, get rid of the ISIS elements there. I think Assad is a very bad actor. The United States, not necessarily trying to find for regime change, I wouldn't say, but if he was overthrown, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the United States. But what I do find interesting, to go back to the very first point you made, was why is the U.S. there, right? I would tell you there's a lot of people who are saying basically the United States shouldn't be there. The United States should go home. The United States, whether it's the Middle Eastern countries or Russia, say, hey, you're not there at the invitation of the government. You should go home. unfortunately, their argument falls apart when you say, okay, well, the United States will leave Syria as soon as Russia leaves Crimea and the obelisks on the east side of Ukraine, because they clearly weren't invited.
Yeah, I'm
Ukraine.
happy that you mentioned Russia, because it's worth highlighting that Syria is the only place in which, in the post-Cold War era, we had a direct confrontation between Russian troops, or so-called Russian troops, which is the Wagner mercenaries group, and U.S. Marines. And the result of this battle, the so-called Battle of Conco, as far as I remember, was like 300 to 0, because 300 people died on the Russian side over there. No U.S. casualties over there, but it was the place where U.S. was confronted by the group of Russian mercenaries. And indeed, Syria is a place where Russia tries to impose its geopolitical power. It is also the region where they try to send their, let's put it this way, aircraft carrier, Admiral Kuznetsov, like a smoking cigar on the oceans. But this is exactly the place where this post-Cold War competition is going on.
100%. And, Russia's learned a lot of lessons in Syria. It's just somewhat mind-boggling that they haven't shared them with their allies, right? As you brought up, the 300 or 500, whatever it is, Wagner forces that were literally utterly wiped off the face of the earth by the U.S. Marines with no casualties on the U.S. side, along with actually Russia trying to, establish what a blue water navy looks like. And blue water means that your carrier can go out and actually, circumnavigate the globe. Russia couldn't do either one of those things. And the United States does it on a regular basis, right? I mean, we've got 10 aircraft carriers that, circumnavigate the globe, one out of the West Coast, one base out of the West Coast, one base out of the East Coast. So this is something the U.S. does quite well. So why Russia's not sharing how potent the U.S. military is with Iran and some of these other nations is somewhat mind-boggling.
Jeff, I would like to have your opinion on the things that surfaced in last days. The big article in Washington Post, also a couple of articles in the military blogs in U.S. that are trying to point to a new strategy that Ukraine should take in the upcoming third year of Russian war against Ukraine. And what puzzles me is that I read again the same things that I've been reading last year and 2 years ago, that Ukraine needs long-range weapons to try to regain the territories or put back Russia in terms of their aggressive posture. But I wonder, what is the reason for which authors of those articles think that right now, when the support of Ukraine and sending weapons to Ukraine is #1 political issue in U.S. right before the presidential election, something else will happen, and that miraculously now those weapons will be delivered if they weren't delivered in the first and the second year of Russian aggression against Ukraine?
Yeah, I think, sadly, I think that this is something that a lot of people, to include myself, is seen out of Joe Biden for the last 2.5, 3 years. And that was that he was willing to help Ukraine to a point. That point did not include ATACMS or F-16s. I think it's important to remember that the F-16s that are actually intending to go right now still are not U.S. ones, right? These are, Norway, the Netherlands, and other F-16s. And we're now to a point where the F-16s are very close to being sent in, and you're starting to see this, strategic shift from the White House where, maybe this war's gone on long enough. And I think it's, Joe Biden is faced with a really tough decision in his mind. And that is, either I have to literally go all in and I have to give him ATACMS and F-16s, or they're going to call my bluff because I'm not going to give them F-16s and I'm going to find some way to delay it a little bit longer. And they're not going to get ATACMS. And this is just going to, drag on and on with, the blood of Ukrainian service members and Russian service members.
Well, that's sad in a way. My final question, do you think that those months that are ahead of us before the presidential election in U.S. Gonna be filled with discussion internal American discussion about the way that U.S. is engaged outside its borders. The U.S. troops are in many hot spots of global political chessboard. And it always was a case of discussion between politicians in U.S. Do you think that anything is going to change after the date of the presidential election in U.S. in terms of this presence?
Yeah, I think it depends on who wins in November, right? If it's Joe Biden, I don't think you're going to see much of a change. You're going to keep him. You're going to see him keep his foreign policy the same way. I think when you're looking at debates and you're looking at what's going to sway the opinions of U.S. voters, I think right now there's just a massive fixation on the southern border in the United States, which is domestic policy. And until that's fixed, I don't know how much foreign policy is really going to play in. The economy is still struggling, trying to get that motor running. I know that there's some good numbers out there that the Biden administration, rightfully so, is touting, but people still feel it in their pocketbooks in the United States, and that how you get a statistic or a measure on that's really tough. So unfortunate for Ukraine, unfortunate for U.S. service members who are probably exasperated and frustrated that they're kind of being forced to fight with their hands tied behind their back and sit steady while their bases are being attacked. But that's the current situation in the United States.
Sadly, the foreign policy is always a function of internal policies, and we are not talking only about United States, but it's actually with every democratic country. That's the way it works. Jeff, thanks a lot. Thanks for your presence. Thanks for your expertise. Hope that we are going to see each other soon in much better circumstances and with some better news to deliver to our viewers. Thanks a lot.
Sure. And hey, by the way, I just wanted to let you know, my fourth book in the Curtain Over thriller series just came out, Russian Puppeteer, about a fictitious war between Ukraine and Russia. So it's about as real as fiction gets. And it has some really interesting dynamics in how geopolitics
when this book is going to be available. Can we find it on Amazon? Can we find it on your social media? Well, I'm the first one because I just found out about it. So I'm going to get it for sure.
Sure. So Russian Puppeteer is available globally on Amazon. It's available in paperback, hardback, and there's a Kindle version. But what's really interesting about this is there's a lot of state of play between the diplomats, right? That the back channel diplomatic engagement between the United States and Russia, right? The Russian ambassador, the president, and what's perhaps fascinating for your readers is that the foreword was written by General Breedlove, who was the EUCOM commander back in 2014 when the original invasion of Crimea. He read the book as a draft and said, this is awesome, and basically offered to write the foreword. He and I were in many of those video conferences with the White House in 2014 on how the diplomacy functions were working. So it'll give the readers really good insight into how some things happen that the world doesn't get to see.
Yeah, so I'm logging to my Amazon account and I'm getting the book. So I'm gonna read it, and I hope that we are going to have a chance to talk about it. General Breedlove knows a thing or two about this war. I remember when he was in charge, when General Ben Hodges was in charge, they declassified the first U.S. military maps that showed exactly those points where we do have war right now as a choke points of future war. And they also marked the migration paths through Europe and through Mediterranean as places where we are going to see important strategic and security threats to Europe. And I've seen those maps personally by them, declassifying it in 2015. So all of our viewers should try to look for Jeff's book.
They're pretty smart guys.
Thanks a lot. See you soon. And we're going to talk about your book in a while. Thanks a lot. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for your time. Remember to log on rachoń.com, leave us your email so that we can be in contact and that you can read our analysis of the situation on the global front line of the war against the West. Stay safe. See you soon.